What is a trunk slammer, and how does this affect you? That is the subject for today's show. Welcome to the show where we tackle the tough questions that are submitted by installers, project managers, estimators, and IT personnel, and even customers. On this show, we are connecting at the human level so that we can connect the world. If you're watching this show on YouTube, would you mind hitting the subscribe button and then the bell button to be notified when new content is being produced? If you're listening to us on one of the podcast platforms, would you mind leaving us a 5-star rating? And if we're not a 5-star rating, let me know what I can do to make this a 5-star show. Now, those couple little steps helps us take on the algorithm, which helps get this information out to more people in the industry who have interest in this content. We are educating, encouraging, and enriching the lives of more people, and we do that by taking on the algorithm. Also, make sure to join us live after hours for our multi-stream broadcast where we answer your favorite questions live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and hopefully Instagram soon. Now, the After Hours Live is held Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the questions that are submitted early will get preference. So make sure you send those emails to questions@letstalkcabling.com because they get the preference. And finally, while we provide this content free of charge, and we always will, if you would like to support this channel and you have access to additional information, make sure you check out our QR code where you can buy me a cup of coffee. You can even schedule some one-on-one time with me via a 15-minute Zoom call after hours. Or you can even become a Patreon member and enjoy additional benefits. Also, make sure you visit our Amazon link page to see our website for products for ICT. You won't pay any extra for it, but I will get a small stipend if you do. And we're always looking out for sponsors for the show. So if you have a company and you're interested in sponsoring this show, make sure you reach out to me. I posted a video on TikTok and Instagram a little bit ago about what is a trunk slammer. Now, the responses I received were pretty wide-ranging. For example, Brian4813 said it's a guy or gal with no official office or company working out of his or her truck. Low Volt Guy responded by saying it's a company or a person who doesn't have pride in their work or take money without following the rules of the jurisdiction, for example, like licensing usually. Now, I did a video on trunk slammers on a live stream about a year and a half ago, and I felt that there's still enough confusion as to what qualifies as a trunk slammer. So I decided to go ahead and do another show on it. Let me start by saying that everybody has a right to their own opinion, but what I ask for you, though, is to have an open mind and realize that not everyone, not every company out there may be at your level. And what I mean by that is some people qualify a trunk slammer as a small or smaller company than their own company. And I've worked for many contractors over the years, and some of them were pretty large companies. In fact, one of them was the largest privately held communications contractor in the United States. So by that definition, everybody else is a trunk slammer. Make sure you put in your comments below how you define a trunk slammer, and if this show has helped you to be able to identify and potentially avoid working with or for or hiring a trunk slammer. Now, I looked up the term trunk slammer on the web, because the web's a good resource as long as you evaluate where that source comes from, and found a definition in Urban Dictionary, and it states that a trunk slammer is a derogatory term for a contractor who has minimal skill, minimal experience, and minimal equipment. Trunk slammers implies that the contractor works out of the trunk of their car and with no office and or license, and they will likely be difficult to find if the client is not happy with their work. I thought that was a pretty good definition. I feel that those key traits are the ones you need to focus on are minimal skill, minimal experience, minimal equipment, no offense or license required. Now, before I jump into all of these, let me say that in order to make a judgment on a company, if it's a trunk slammer or not, you really need to look at the whole picture. Let me explain what I mean by that. One of my hobbies on the side is I like to train dogs. I don't compete in any IPO events or any dog shows. I just love the relationship that develops with me and my dogs and the benefits that I get from having a well-trained dog. So from training a dog, I've learned a lot of life skills that also apply to the business world. Now, you have to be able to communicate with your dog, both verbally and hand signal, and know what emotional state that your dog is in training to get the maximum amount from each training session. Now, just because a dog is wagging their tail, that doesn't mean that that dog is happy. You have to take a look at the entire picture. Is the dog making good eye contact with you? Or is it avoiding eye contact with you? Are the ears erect or are they laid back? Is the dog standing proud or is the dog cowering? Is the hair on the dog's back standing up or is it laid down flat? If the dog exhibits most or all of these traits that I just discussed, then the dog is probably experiencing a different emotion other than happiness. And if you approach this dog while it's in that state, you are probably going to get bit. The same way you'll get bit if you use a trunk slammer. Now, identifying a trunk slammer is much like that happy dog signals. A true trunk slammer will exhibit most, if not all, of those traits that I just talked about. Just because a company may not be working out of a traditional office doesn't mean that they are a trunk slammer. In fact, one of the companies that I worked for when I first got in this industry, we reported to the owner's condominium at first. That same contractor today has multiple offices across the United States. By no means a trunk slammer. Now, remember those traits that I talked about just a few minutes ago about trunk slammers, right? Let's go dive into each and every one of those, starting off with minimal experience. A trunk slammer will generally be new to the industry. They will usually have from a couple days to maybe a year or two's worth of experience. They don't see the value in taking extra time or additional steps required to doing the right way or to the customer satisfaction. They just don't take pride in their work. A seasoned technician will take pride in their work. You want proof? Just visit Instagram or TikTok. There are plenty of examples of people out there who take pride in their work. You want an example? Go look up Sean Rep on Instagram and TikTok. That guy is a closet artist. Now, the reason that the trunk slammer doesn't want to take pride in their work is because they're just in it. It's just cable. How hard can this truly be, right? It's just cable. Well, the installation practice that we used to use 40 years ago to install cable when I first got in this industry are typically no longer valid. I'll give you an example. We used to staple POTS cabling to the baseboard around the room. Now, POTS cabling stands for plain old telephone service cable. It's just a 4-conductor cable with very little twist. And when you staple it, it doesn't have any adverse effects typically on the cable as long as you don't run the staple through the middle of the cable. Now, if you staple today's high-performance data cabling, you are going to have crosstalk, and then generally you will not get a pass when you go to certify that cable. Now, these same trunk slammers are generally not open to learning the right methods, and this ties back to both to it's just cable, and they don't want to spend the time on learning on how to do it correctly. Remember, knowledge is a commitment, and it's a commitment to being a lifelong learner. And if you want to be good in this field, you have to be a lifelong learner. Today, the trunk slammer, this is just a job, not a career. There's a huge difference between a job and a career. I need to do a show on that in the future. Now, despite not taking the time to getting trained, they also have a false sense of bravado. And by that I mean they have false confidence. They'll come off with having an attitude that they know everything about cabling. I've got 40 years of experience in this industry, and I still don't know everything. And I still hate when people try to refer to me as an expert. There are no experts in this industry. I get asked questions all the time, and some of them I actually have to go research and look up because nobody is an expert in every facet of this industry. The best you can be is to be a constant learner. And knowledge is a weird thing. And the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. I don't understand why a trunk slammer, or anyone else for that point, would not want to invest in training. There are plenty of great resources out there to provide free training. All you got to do is invest time. You don't leave knowledge in the ceiling like sometimes you leave your tools. So you should be investing in knowledge. Now, trunk slammers will also take shortcuts around the steps required for safety. They don't want to spend the time to get that harness for that confined space or the testing equipment for the confined space. They don't want to go rent that scissor lift to install that cable in that warehouse safely when they can do it some unsafe way. They think that the chances are minimal that somebody won't get hurt. And reality is, people do get hurt, and sometimes they get killed. I lost an uncle to a workplace tragedy. The second trait is that they have minimal equipment. They generally have just enough to get the job done. They will not want to go out and spend money on, for example, like a punch tool to terminate cable correctly. They might probably just use the disposable one that comes in the bulk pack from the one that they bought at the big box store. Or worse yet, they use a screwdriver to terminate a jack. By the way, don't use a screwdriver. It will bend and mangle the pins and you won't get connectivity issues. And you're going to have all kinds of problems. I taught a class one time where somebody terminated their jacks with dog tags. The trunk slammer will also generally lack a company vehicle. They will work out of the trunk of the car, the trunk of their personal car, hence the term trunk slammer, right? Now, not only are they working out of the trunk of the car, but everything is just thrown into the trunk with no organization. They will waste a lot of time searching for parts, not realizing that money is time and time is money. And they're just wasting it looking for stuff. They will try to use leftover parts from previous projects. And let's just say they were doing a project where they had to install 10 jacks. And all they had in their trunk was 9 red jacks and 1 blue one. That would be fine for a trunk slammer. Or worse yet, they had 10 jacks, but they were from 3 different manufacturers. So they're all 3 different shades of red, right? Or worse yet, now they got to use different faceplates from all those different manufacturers to accommodate those 3 different types of jacks. So you don't get a uniform finish. Another area where a trunk slammer falls short is they don't have the correct testers. They will install a high-performance data cable system, and then they'll just measure for continuity and polarity or transposals. That a verifier will not identify things like crosstalk, propagation, or delay skew. All those things can cause the data cable to not function even though it passes for continuity. You want to start a raging debate on social media amongst low-voltage installers? Put a post up asking if they should test cables with a certifier. If you are in this industry making money, you should be testing your cables with a certifier, if for no other reason to ensure that the products that you just installed will perform to the level of category rating that's designed to be. We can argue later about whether or not you charge extra for those certified test results or not. That's a different subject. But you see, that trunk slammer, they're not going to use that certifier. They're just going to use that continuity tester, because for them, it's all about getting paid and then getting out. They don't care about investing in equipment. The trunk slammer also tends to disappear when the customer is having issues, because the trunk slammer is not concerned about whether or not the customer is happy. They don't know anything about repeat business. Your most profitable projects will be from ones where you have developed that relationship with the customer and you're going back and doing multiple projects on the site because you've built trust with them. They trust you to the point that they will not want to use anybody else on the project but you. They only want you working on their cable plan because they know that if there is a problem, you will be there to fix it. The trunk slammer will not be there to fix their issue. And in fact, they may even be out of business. And this puts the customer in a really bad position because now they're going to have to hire another contractor to come fix the issues that the trunk slammer created. And since the trunk slammer didn't follow the codes or the standards, the new company has to take time to figure out what exactly did that trunk slammer do. And again, time is money. Or worse yet, they'll hire another trunk slammer to come back to fix the issues that the first trunk slammer did. Some customers only care about money, and they will pick the lowest price, even if that means trunk slammers. They are willing to take that chance on those issues just to save a few bucks. As a reputable cable contractor, you don't want that kind of customer, and it is okay to say no. It is okay to even fire a customer. You heard me right. You can fire customers. So why all the confusion between small companies and trunk slammers? How do you tell the difference between a small company or a trunk slammer? Again, a small company may exhibit 1 or 2 of these traits that I just explained, But again, when you're looking at the whole picture, the whole story, you'll find that that small company is willing to learn and get up to speed on how to do it. That small company will do everything they can to improve and willing to make the investment to be a better contractor. For example, if you want to have a project that requires the use of two-part epoxy fiber connectors, for whatever reason, that's what the customer wants you to use, but you're only trained in doing mechanical or fusion splicing, a small company will reach out to a manufacturer or even to their local sales reps, and they will learn those skill sets that are required. And if for some reason they can't talk the customer into using a fusion splicing or better alternatives, they'll try that first. Now, the trunk slammer will not try to learn those skill sets. They'll either just put on the connectors that they want or just put on the required connectors that were sent out by the customer without getting proper training. And now you got a bunch of connectors out there that are done wrong. Talking about a disaster waiting to happen? There you go. Now, the trunk slammer will also generally have no office or licensing. Now, this is probably what drives the biggest confusion about the difference between small companies and trunk slammers. There are plenty of small companies out there that started off without having an office. And in today's environment, where there's a virtual workforce and a lot of companies are downsizing anyway, we're shifting back to that small office. There's a lot of companies now that trade is just not accurate anymore. So don't judge it based on whether it's a small company or not. The final trait is the trunk slammer is going to have minimal tools. The trunk slammer does not have, nor do they want to buy, the right tools to do the job. Small companies, while they may not have the tools required, they will buy, they will rent, they will borrow the right tools to do the job. Because to them, to that small company, this is an investment in their future. This is not a passing fad for them like it is for that trunk slammer. Now, there are some pretty good reasons to avoid working with or subcontracting a trunk slammer and as a customer. The biggest is loss of revenue. Now, because that trunk slammer has cut corners because they didn't know code, they didn't know the standards, or they didn't use the right tools, it's not a matter of time if the network goes down, but when and for how long the network will go down. If the network is down, then the people who are supposed to be using that network can't be doing their jobs. They can't be making phone calls and sending emails. And since you can't find the trunk slammer to come back to fix the issue, now it's going to take even more time to find a reputable cable contractor to come out and do that repair. Again, time is money. Using a reputable company will also mitigate risks. Since the trunk slammer is not using the right equipment, nor are they following the appropriate safety protocols for a workplace, an injury is going to happen. Now, the injury may not be to one of their workers. It might be to one of your workers if you're a customer. Or it might be one of your workers if you're subcontracting that trunk slammer. There's also a potential for loss of data. Now, when the network goes down and it crashes because they were using trunk slammers, how do you even calculate the amount of time? How do you calculate the amount of resources to recover data? That's a hard one to try to figure out. Now, I hope that I've clarified the distinct difference between a trunk slammer and a small business. Now, there are two easy ways to identify if a cable contractor you're looking to hire or to subcontract. And those two ways are either through just look at their documentation and then also visit their operations and look at some of their past projects. Now, some simple documentation steps would be ask that contractor that you're looking to hire or subcontract for a copy of their business license, a copy of their insurance. When you look at those, make sure that they are up to date. Make sure that the insurance that they have is through a reputable insurance company. Ask them for references for other projects of similar size and in the same industry. Great contractors take a lot of pride and spend a lot of effort into building relationships with customers, and they will be more than happy to share this information with you. Finally, ask for the documentation on their training. What training do they have from manufacturers? What industry certifications does their staff have? Do they belong to any trade organizations like BICSI, CEDIA, FOA, Low Voltage Nation, just to name a few off the top of my head? Because if they invest in those agencies, then you know that they're trying to make the industry better. Once you have all that information, ask to go visit the project that they used as a reference. Look at their work. How do the closets look? Do the face plates look level? And if you really want to get nitty gritty, You can even bring along a ladder and look above the ceiling and ask to talk to the point of contact for that site, preferably when the contractor's not there with you, so that we can get an honest opinion. And ask that point of contact, how was it like working with that contractor? Were they attentive to your needs? Were you satisfied with their work and how they performed that work? If you brought an issue to their attention, did they resolve it to your satisfaction? And if so, did they do it quickly? As a final kicker, ask to look at one of the contractor's work vans. Is it in good shape? Is it clean? How old is the truck? How does that person who assigned that truck, how do they have it organized? Or is it not organized? Again, as I stated before, not one of these things makes a trunk slammer. Not one of these things makes a good small contractor. But when you look at the entire picture, you will get a good indication of whether that contractor is a reputable company or a trunk slammer. Now, this advice is also good for other contractors when you're looking to subcontract work, when your workload is too much and you can't handle in-house. Nothing can varnish your reputation faster than a subcontractor who's a trunk slammer. Especially after you spent all that time and all that energy to get a good reputation, they can ruin it in just one project. And from a customer's perspective, they don't know that you hired a subcontractor. All they know is those people on that job site, even though they are a subcontractor, as far as they know, that's your company. That's your reputation. Don't risk it. I feel that the key traits to focus on are minimal skill, minimal experience, minimal equipment, no office, and no licensing. So don't get confused with trunk slammers and small companies. Small companies can be some really good companies to have do your work for you because they're out there to make a reputation. Until next time, remember, knowledge is power.
That's it for this episode of today's podcast. We hope you were able to learn something. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. Also, leave a rating so we can help even more people learn about telecommunications. Until next time, be safe.